Unexpected romance exposed, how a surprising blind date transformed a rich woman's life forever. Heather sat at her polished desk, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her immaculate office. As a prominent corporate lawyer in Chicago, she was constantly surrounded by luxury, a luxury that felt like a noose tightening around her neck. The walls of her office echoed with the laughter and banter of her peers, each more glamorous and successful than the last. Yet, as she watched her reflection in the glass, all she could see was a woman suffocating behind a mask of success. The gilded cage of her family's expectations loomed larger every day. She'd been raised to believe that happiness was synonymous with achievement, that a prestigious marriage was simply a part of the legacy her mother had crafted. As her friends flaunted their affluent partners, each announcement sent daggers of dread through her heart. A wedding next month, a ring just slipped on a finger. And here she was, feeling like an imposter in her own life, facing the imminent doom of an arranged marriage that filled her with dread. Questions swirled. Would marrying the man her parents chose truly make her happy? Could she ever step outside their perfect little box? Just then, her phone buzzed. It was Angela, her ever-enthusiastic friend, nudging her to go on another blind date. It'll be fun. Just one night to escape your reality, Heather. The idea filled her with both trepidation and a flicker of intrigue. A blind date? Could there be a chance it might divert her from her predetermined path, even if just for a moment? Her resolve began to weaken. That night, she said yes, not fully grasping the ripple effects this simple choice would have on her life. The moment she walked into the small, dimly lit cafe, Heather nearly turned around. But then she saw him, Jake. A burst of color in an otherwise muted world, he radiated a warmth that felt disconcertingly foreign. His stories unfurled like vibrant brushstrokes on canvas, filled with struggles and triumphs, each word pulling her deeper into his genuine reality. Their conversation crackled with energy as they explored their contrasting definitions of success, and she couldn't help but laugh and connect in a way she hadn't done in years. Just as she began to feel a glimmer of hope, reality crashed over her like a cold wave. A successful lawyer dating an artist from a working-class neighborhood? The societal judgment would be brutal. Fear danced on the edges of her mind, whispering threats of her mother's disappointment and the family gossip that would follow. Yet, the chemistry between them was undeniable, like stars colliding, awakening a side of her she believed was lost. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As her secret relationship with Jake blossomed, she felt exhilarated yet terrified. Every moment spent with him was flavorsome but laced with danger. She savored the nights they wandered through Chicago's underground art scene, where vibrant murals whispered stories her family would shun. But with every shared laugh, Heather felt the weight of her dual existence pressing harder, suffocating her joy. Would the outside world's judgment cost her the only instance of genuine happiness she'd ever embraced? Back at family gatherings, the air buzzed with danger, thick with expectations. Would she find the courage to stand up against a legacy that felt more like a shackle than a shield? With every glance they threw her way, she felt the familiar tug of duty against her blooming desire for authenticity. As she prepared to reveal her feelings for Jake, the silence grew, thick with judgment and anticipation, leaving a fracture in her heart. Every heartbeat felt monumental. Would she choose love over legacy, or would her voice falter? Standing on the precipice of change, she drew a deep breath, ready to speak her truth, yet the words hovered at the edge, consuming her resolve with unyielding uncertainty. Heather's heart raced in the quiet room, an almost deafening silence echoing her inner turmoil. Each familiar face around the family gathering seemed to amplify the weight of her decision. She felt like a performer on a stage, exposed and vulnerable, the spotlight harsh and unyielding. The relentless pressure from her family loomed larger, its grip tightening with the promise of judgment and disapproval. She shifted her gaze, catching Jake's smiling face etched in her mind. The image warmed her, but the conflict brewed within as she considered letting her parents see him, the man who showed her the colors of a life yet unimagined. Would they even allow room for a disagreement, for a deviation from their dreams for her? The artistic world Jake roamed felt both exhilarating and forbidden, a juxtaposition that left her dizzy. As Heather picked at her meal, she wondered could she muster enough courage to unveil the true identity of her burgeoning happiness? "This is who I am now, Mom and Dad," she thought, gnawing on her fork. "Can't you see I'm not made for your picture-perfect life anymore?" But the more she considered what she wanted versus what others expected, the deeper her fears sank into her core. What if they shattered the fragile peace she'd managed to build with Jake? Later that evening, she slipped away from her family in search of solitude. The night air brushed against her skin like a balm, yet the coolness failed to soothe her inner conflict. She glanced up at the stars, searching for reassurance from the cosmos. Instead, they twinkled above, indifferent to her plight, provoking frustration within her. "I need a sign," she muttered under her breath, grappling for clarity in a mist of confusion. The following days became a blur of tension as Heather oscillated between her family commitments and her newfound relationship with Jake. Communication with him was secretive, each stolen moment a bittersweet thrill. Jake's understanding nature offered her refuge from the chaos of her life, yet the clandestine nature of their interactions heightened her anxiety. One evening, he asked her pointedly, "Heather, what are we doing? Do you see a future for us, or is this just a fling?" She tilted her head, reflecting on how liberating it felt to be questioned so directly. This was knowing, not just being. "I want to explore this with you," she confessed, surprised to find her voice steady. But what would this mean when compared to the empire perched on her shoulders? Determined to confront her fears, Heather decided to introduce Jake to her family during an upcoming dinner. It was an impulsive resolution driven by a tsunami of emotion. She meticulously crafted a conversation with her family, where she would navigate the tumult of emotions while trying to maintain her dignity. However, a sudden doubt knocked the wind from her sails as she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, rehearsing her lines. What if they reacted worse than she feared? A shiver of panic coursed through her. What if this act of courage backfired, ruining the only relationship that made her feel genuinely alive? The stakes felt sky-high, and she teetered on the edge of making a decision that could alter the course of her life. As the day approached, she fortified her resolve and reminded herself that risking emotional vulnerability could spark the change she so desperately needed. Standing upon that precipice between her old life and the unknown, she felt an electric thrill. Would she embrace a love unchained by convention, or would she retreat to the safety of propriety? For the first time, she sensed the chance to sculpt her destiny, to redefine success on her terms. Yet, the nagging voice of her family's expectations echoed louder than before, a reminder of what she would be risking. The dinner moment loomed, heavy with the air of anticipation and dread. With every breath, the weight of every choice intensified. Would she follow her heart and risk her legacy? Or would she play it safe, submitting once more to a life dictated by the walls of her lavish prison? The time was now. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding furiously in her chest, ready to take the leap. Would love set her free or ensnare her deeper into the confines she tried to escape? Heather's palms were clammy as she adjusted her blouse for the 5th time. She stood at the entrance of her family's elegant dining room, the scent of rich food mixing with the faint echo of laughter, both reassuring and suffocating. As she approached the table, the bright chandelier cast her shadow long and uncertain against the polished floor. This was it. The culmination of her inward struggle, the moment she would either soar or plummet. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The eyes of her family turned toward her, curious yet slightly wary. "I'd like to introduce someone very important to me." Her words trembled on the edge of a precipice, veering between confession and confrontation. Quiet murmurs broke through the otherwise structured atmosphere of familial warmth, but she pressed on, her heart drumming a staccato rhythm against her ribcage. "This is Jake," she finally managed to say, gesturing toward the doorway from which he had just stepped, holding a small bouquet of flowers, seemingly oblivious to the weight of the moment. Jake gave a warm smile, unaffected by the tension. "Hi, everyone. It's great to meet all of you," he said, his tone light and genuine. For a fleeting moment, Heather felt comforted by his presence, as if he were a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Her family's reaction, however, was immediate and predictably mixed. The silence thickened as her mother's brow furrowed, her father's eyes narrowed, and her younger brother leaned forward with curiosity laced with incredulity. Heather held in her breath, awaiting the anticipated scrutiny. "Nice to meet you, Jake," her mother said finally. The words felt heavy with caution. "What do you do?" "Actually," Jake began enthusiastically, "I'm an artist. I work mainly with mixed media and installations." He spoke with a passion that was genuine, his hands gesturing animatedly. Heather had moments like this, where Jake's zest for life was infectious, and part of her wished her family could feel that too. "Oh," her father replied, his voice sharp, the word hanging in the air like a storm cloud. "And what else do you do, apart from art?" The respect in her father's tone diminished. Heather's stomach tightened in response. She could sense Jake swallowing the bite of judgment he was about to receive. Still, he stood firm. "That's what I love doing. It's where I find my voice." Heather's chest swelled with pride at his bravery, but fear constricted her heart. Would they let him in, or would their prejudices erect a wall too thick to breach? She realized that the validation she sought wasn't coming from her family but was anchored deeply within herself. Conversations drifted around the table, and Heather felt the divide widen between her and her family. They spoke in phrases littered with expectations: prestigious jobs, status, convention. With each repetitive mention of family legacy, a jagged knot twisted tighter in her throat. And yet, across the table, Jake animatedly shared stories about his installations, his art, and the unconventional beauty of the world. After a while, she felt emboldened by his fearless spirit. "Dad, Mom, this is who I am now," she asserted, her voice rising with conviction. "I'm not defined by your dreams for me. Jake makes me want to chase what truly matters to me. Art, passion, a life lived fully. I want my own future." The air crackled with the perilous tension of her declaration. Next to her, Jake nodded, his eyes sparkling with encouragement. "Honey, we want the best for you," her mother interjected, the softness in her tone clashing with the rigidity in her posture. "But this is all so sudden. Are you sure you're making the right decision?" The question hung in the air like a pall, invasive and questioning. An avalanche of emotions swirled within her. Was she truly ready to face the fallout of pursuing her own happiness over familial expectations? The vulnerability of her stance laid bare before them felt liberating yet terrifying, each heartbeat a reminder of the risk she had taken. In that moment, as she confronted the fears she long suppressed, Heather realized she was standing at the crossroads of her identity. Embracing the unknown felt exhilarating, yet uncertainty gnawed deeply at her insides. She felt Jake's hand brush against hers beneath the table, grounding her. What happens next? Surfaced in her mind, but the answer felt elusive. Could this moment forge a new path or fracture everything she held dear? The conversation ricocheted around the table, but Heather's focus narrowed. Each word from her parents echoed like a challenge, testing her commitment to a new way of living. With her mind racing, she wondered how far she was willing to go to claim a life that was truly her own. Could she transform her love into resilience, or would she allow their cautious conservatism to silence her burgeoning passion? The dawning realization urged her forward into the tempest of choice, and Heather felt the undeniable urge to push against the confines that threatened to box her in. She inhaled deeply, her heart on the verge of bursting. Would tonight's decision mark the end of her retreat into safety or the beginning of an uncharted journey? The answer hung, tantalizingly close, just out of reach as she prepared to confront the truth of her family's vision and her own. The noise of cutlery clinking against fine china filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling within Heather's mind. Each conversation seemed to ripple away from her, distant and muted, as she struggled to focus. Her family's gaze was a weight she felt on her very skin. Their expectations, opinions, and subtle judgments were palpable, wrapping around her like a vice. Jake, seemingly impervious to the tumult of the moment, was animatedly describing one of his recent projects, a large-scale mural in a community center. Heather marveled at how he could share his passion with such ease, how he had an innate ability to enliven mundane surroundings with his artistry. As his words painted vivid images in her mind, she felt the flicker of her own aspirations reawakening. A small voice within her whispered, what if she could find a way to live that truth bravely? Suddenly, her father's voice cut sharply through the haze. Is it really sustainable? Passion is one thing, but you have to consider stability, security. How will you support yourself? The undercurrent of disbelief hung through the question, tightening the knot in her throat. Heather inhaled sharply, clenching her fists under the table. Could she articulate the power of following a dream, even an unconventional one? Even as the plans swirled in her thoughts, she grappled with the fear of their disappointment painting the air thick around her. It's more than just money, she finally interjected, surprising even herself. It's about what makes us feel alive, it's about the joy in creation. The transformation of her assertion from a timid murmur into a bold declaration stunned her. As if propelled by a newfound source of energy, she continued, I've spent too long letting you dictate what I should be. This is who I am, and just because it doesn't fit your mold doesn't make it any less valid. Each word took form, brimming with untapped conviction, emboldened by the knowledge that this was not simply about her, she was asserting her place in the world. The air grew heavy, her family's expressions shifted from uncertainty to varied shades of disbelief. Her mother's eyes reflected the flicker of concern, while her father's narrowed gaze delved deeper, demanding answers. Yet, from across the table, she caught Jake's eye. His small nod of encouragement anchored her resolve. Just then, her younger brother broke the tension, an innocent curiosity lighting up his face. But what about the future? What if you don't get enough clients or sales? His voice was soft, but through it, Heather sensed the echoes of her parents weighing on him. Realizing the validity of his question, she hesitated for a moment, then responded, it's not solely about guaranteed outcomes. It's about embracing the journey, taking risks, and potentially failing. If I never try, I'll always wonder what might have been, or you could end up regretting it, her mother interjected sharply, her tone tinged with a protective edge. Heather felt the sharp edge of that retort, but instead of retreating, a wave of anger surged within her. Regret is what I've felt for years by not chasing my dreams. Living for the approval of others, suppressing my true self that feels far more suffocating than the risk of pursuing my passion. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped the table. The familiar battlefield of family loyalty confronted the foreign territory of desire and self-expression. Heather held her breath, aware that the ground beneath her shifted. She felt like a tightrope walker, balancing precariously between the approval she craved and the authenticity she fiercely desired. Overwhelmed with emotion, she took a sip of water to steady herself. This moment felt monumental, not just a confrontation with her family but a necessary affirmation of her identity. The daunting task of crafting her path had never felt clearer. As the meal continued, the conversation shifted to trivial matters, but Heather remained engrossed in her thoughts. An inscrutable fire within her sparked a realization: embracing her identity was not merely an act of rebellion, it was a necessity for her own growth. What would happen in the wake of her declaration? Would this act of honesty invite acceptance from her family, or would it only breed further dissent? She felt poised at a precipice, ready to leap into a future that was becoming increasingly vibrant yet still vastly unknown. As dessert was served, the tension still crackled above them, leaving Heather with the sensation of being both exhilarated and terrified. The decisions she had made tonight unfurled new possibilities, shimmering with potential. Could her assertion of self provide the clarity both she and her family needed to navigate this changed dynamic? With each passing moment, Heather could feel a new chapter demanding to be written not just for herself but for everyone around her. The questions loomed large in her mind, promising to delve deeper in the next encounter. Would this be a breakthrough or a break from the past altogether? The sun filtered through the half-drawn curtains of Heather's bedroom, casting stripes of light across her cluttered desk, a physical manifestation of the chaos tumbling inside her mind. She sat there, staring blankly at the canvas before her, a blank slate that mocked her current turmoil. Last night's family dinner echoed in her ears, her father's skepticism, her mother's concern, her brother's innocent yet piercing question. Each word replayed relentlessly, forging doubt amidst the embers of her determination. Days passed, and Heather oscillated between moments of fervor for her artistic aspirations and the paralyzing fear of stepping too far away from the safety net of her family's expectations. She began to recognize that this internal battle was not just a clash of dreams and practicality, it was a deep-seated struggle for her own identity. Daring to think differently, she cautiously began envisioning the kind of artist she wanted to become, a creator who infused soul into every brushstroke. Settling into the monumental decision to attend a local artist's workshop felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Social anxiety clung to her steadily. How would her unconventional pursuits be received among seasoned artists? They might laugh at her, dismiss her aspirations as mere folly. She clenched her jaw, redirecting her fear into resolve. This was a chance to redefine her narrative, to climb over the walls she had allowed others to construct around her. The day of the workshop arrived, and the moment she stepped into the sun-washed studio, her heart raced with anticipation. Artists of various backgrounds mingled, the vibrant chatter forming a tapestry of creativity that she longed to weave herself into. So many unique stories, each person a testament to overcoming fears and pursuing the intangible. As the instructor began discussing techniques, Heather found herself transfixed, her mind igniting with ideas that had long been dormant. She imagined herself experimenting with color, freedom spilling out onto her palette. With each passing minute, she exchanged her thoughts with fellow participants, sharing tips, fears, and inspirations. The shared vulnerability created an unexpected camaraderie, yet she was painfully aware of her lingering insecurities. Could she really thrive in this world? The workshop morphed into a series of challenges that gradually chipped away at her hesitations. Each project revealed layers of skill she never knew she possessed: a keen eye for composition, an innate ability to evoke emotion through color. For the first time in ages, a whisper of pride began to surface within her. But with each triumph, shadows of familial judgment lingered in her subconscious. The fear of revealing her progress gnawed at her spirit, a nagging reminder of the clashing ideals she felt. What would her family think of this newfound confidence? Would they dismiss it as just another phase of rebellion? Determined, she decided to invite her family to her next exhibition as an act of defiance against doubt. The thought was exhilarating and petrifying, a leap into vulnerability that felt akin to standing on the edge of a cliff. She could already envision her parents exchanging nervous glances, the tension settling thick in the air. It was like an invitation marked with an unspoken challenge. Would they rally behind her newfound aspirations or retreat into safe skepticism? Her heart raced as she finalized the date. Would they acknowledge her efforts, or would the fear of their judgment stifle her spirit again? Questions flooded her mind, but beneath them blossomed a sense of purpose, a guiding light leading her toward what she craved most: acceptance of her true self. As she prepared her canvases for the exhibition, doubts once again coiled around her like a noxious vine. Each stroke on those canvases was not merely paint, they were declarations, her defenses against a past where approval dictated her actions. But would this bold step lead to the breakthrough she so desperately sought, or would it shatter the fragile semblance of stability her family had woven around her? With the exhibition looming, Heather felt the rising tide of both possibility and panic. This was not merely a presentation of her art, it was a fork in a road she had been traversing for far too long. Would she be brave enough to confront her family and embrace the disarray of her inner world? The moment of truth arrived, and Heather stood poised on the brink of a seismic shift, knowing that her decision could reverberate through her life and her family's perception of her forever. The question thrummed in her chest: were her dreams worth the risk of discovery? The night of the exhibition loomed, and Heather stood alone in her dimly lit studio, surrounded by her completed canvases. The vibrant colors glimmered under the soft glow of the hanging lamps, each painting a testament to her growth, yet the air felt heavy with anxiety. She could hear her family's voices echoing in her mind, simmering with a mix of skepticism and concern. The moment of unveiling her true self felt both thrilling and daunting. As she turned away from the canvases, her gaze landed on her portfolio. It was a compilation of her artistic journey, the messy sketches, the bold strokes, the failed experiments, all encapsulated within those pages. Each piece represented not just a moment in time but the relentless pursuit of her identity. The thought of sharing this vulnerable side with her family was both terrifying and exhilarating. Heather took a deep breath, trying to quiet the storm of fear that churned within her. What if they didn't see the passion behind her work? What if their skepticism swallowed her whole? But she reminded herself of how far she had come, how each brushstroke had liberated a part of her spirit. The urge to maintain their approval had kept her bound for too long. This was an opportunity for liberation, not just for her, but potentially for them as well. The evening arrived brighter than she anticipated, the gallery hummed with energy as friends and fellow artists gathered. Adrenaline coursed through her veins like wildfire, and she reminded herself how important each connection was. This was not simply about displaying her art, it was about sharing the essence of who she had become. The vibrant colors representing her embrace of self-expression were also invitations to her family to witness her evolution. When she spotted her family entering the gallery, her heart sank momentarily. They looked lost among the crowd, and she could already envision their expressions of bewilderment when they would encounter her bold creations. Her father's brow would furrow with disapproval, her mother's lips would tighten in concern, and her brother's enthusiastic yet naive questions would linger painfully obvious. Still, she squared her shoulders, determined to face what lay ahead. Her parents approached her with cautious smiles, and Heather felt the weight of their expectations pressing down harder than ever. She braced herself, opening the dialogue with an enthusiasm that masked her trepidation, eager to ignite a spark of understanding. "What do you think?" she asked, gesturing toward a swirling depiction of the ocean, her most personal piece. Her father's eyes scanned the painting, and he opened his mouth to speak, but hesitation lingered in the air. Heather's stomach knotted as she anticipated a critique rooted in practicality rather than appreciation. Instead of a judgment, he paused, considering the tempestuous waves she had captured, a reflection of her internal struggles. "It's interesting," he said finally, a hint of admiration slipping through the careful layers of skepticism. Her heart quickened at the possibility of recognition, even for just a moment. Then her mother, cautious yet curious, stepped forward, her expression softening. "It's different, sweetheart. I see your heart in this." It was as if a dam within Heather began to crack. Her art had given them a window into her soul. She felt a surge of defiance and boldness, deciding to not only display her paintings but share the stories behind them. With each piece she articulated the emotions, the battles fought, and the triumphs achieved. As the night unfolded, Heather noticed a shift in her family's demeanor. They began to engage, asking questions, commenting on the layers of meaning etched into each canvas. The seeds of doubt that once strained their relationship started to dissipate. For the first time, Heather experienced a glimmer of acceptance not only of her art but of her identity. However, just as hope began to blossom, she saw an unmistakable flicker of discontent on her father's face when he turned to another piece of vibrant representation of her pain and struggle, stark and unfiltered. The moment was fragile, yet pivotal, and Heather felt the tension rising. She was ready to fight for her art, for her truth, and for the respect of her family. But would they embrace her entire self, or would this be the moment they pushed back against the boundaries she had begun to redefine? The flicker of confrontation hung in the air, and as she braced herself to challenge their reservations, she thought to herself, "This is just the beginning." Would she succeed in carving a space for her authenticity, or would she have to once again navigate the waters of approval and acceptance? The tightening grip of anxiety rushed through Heather as her father scrutinized the painting. It felt like a personal invasion, as if every shade and brushstroke were being dissected for hidden weaknesses. Her instinct was to fold, to retreat into the safety of her own thoughts, but she refused to let that happen. This moment beckoned for her courage. Summoning her resolve, she stepped closer to her father and watched as his expression shifted from contempt to contemplation. "Dad, I created that piece while grappling with my feelings. It embodies the pain I went through trying to find my voice." His brow furrowed deeper, not in disapproval but rather in attempt to understand. For the first time, Heather saw a flicker of openness in his eyes, a vulnerability she had longed for in her family dynamics. "You think this is going to make you happy?" he asked cautiously, as if challenging the very essence of her choices. Heather inhaled sharply, her heart thumping wildly against her ribcage. "It makes me feel alive, and isn't that what life's about? I can't paint what you want me to. I can only paint what's true to me." In those few, honest words, she felt the quiet power of her truth emanating from her. It changed the atmosphere around them, igniting a soft but palpable warmth. Her mother, now observing with intent rather than skepticism, nodded slowly in agreement, partially drawn into the emotional undercurrents Heather had exposed. "What if I told you," Heather continued, heart racing with newfound bravery, "that the only reason I held back from pursuing art was because I was afraid of what you might think? That I didn't want you to disapprove?" The honesty startled them. Her father's reaction sent ripples through the fabric of their family unit. The tension thickened, as questions buried for years began to surface. "You should have told us," her mother whispered, tearful yet defiant. "We never wanted to stifle you, you just wanted what was best for me," Heather interrupted gently, feeling more connected than she had in ages. "But I need to define my own best." Her voice steadied, each word embedding itself deeper into the foundation of their relationship. As she discussed the inspirations behind her works, her father's demeanor softened further, his cynicism replaced by a budding respect. The other guests in the gallery faded into the background, but for Heather, it felt like she and her family were finally sharing a moment that transcended art. It was a communion of acceptance and understanding. Yet, while uplifted by a fresh sense of hope, she was painfully aware of the lingering questions still untouched, bound by the barriers of perception. For every compliment shared, there seemed to exist an unspoken worry that hummed beneath the surface. Would they ever fully accept her truth? Just when she thought they had reached a breakthrough, her father pointed to another painting, the one harboring her rawest pain. The blood-red hues and jagged lines symbolized the shattering of her own expectations. I can't quite get over how dark this one is. Are you sure it's healthy to make something like this public?" he ventured, the concern etched across his face. "Why not?" Heather exclaimed, shocked by the sudden surge of frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's part of my journey. Isn't growth rooted in facing our darkest moments?" The emotions welled up, a dizzying mixture of anger and grief. Heather's palms itched with the desire to unload, to critique their need for everything to be flawless and polished. This was not merely about art, it was about life, authenticity, and breaking free from the chains of mediated expectations. As silence hung heavily, he thought of stepping back, perhaps recognizing that some things would require time. But the flicker of doubt in her father's eyes ignited something fierce within her. "Can you accept me as I am, flaws and all? Or must I tailor my expression to appease a fear of discomfort?" It was the decisive moment that pulsated with a blend of defiance and hope. She felt an urge to forge ahead into the unknown, no matter where it led. Before her father could respond, Heather stepped back, a deep ache lingering in her chest. She had unleashed her truth, yet dread intermingled with excitement over their shifting dynamics. As she confronted the waves of possibility, she realized, her battle was far from over. After the confrontation, Heather turned to face the audience, noticing the curious glances that reaffirmed her visibility. Would her family rise to the challenge of acceptance, or would this revelation push them further apart? The battle lines had been drawn, and in that electric moment, Heather dared to see the edges of their relationship morphing beneath her gaze. An undeniable truth resonated within her: the real challenge lay ahead, and it would demand not only acceptance but an evolving understanding of love. The night had only begun, and as she scanned the gallery filled with colorful voices, a new urgency burst forth. What steps would she take next in her journey of authenticity? How far was she willing to go to ensure her truth remained unfiltered? The answers awaited just beyond the canvas. Fueled by a cocktail of nervous energy and fierce determination, Heather paced the gallery, each step reverberating with the weight of her decision. Surrounded by art that reflected her soul, she could feel the intensity of the stares lingering on her, each gaze a reminder that her vulnerability was now public knowledge. The depth of her pain, the rawness of her truth, it hung in the air, transforming the gallery into a space fraught with potential as well as peril. The fresh sense of liberation was intoxicating, yet it sparked a new tension within her. Inside, she wrestled with the nagging doubt: had she truly opened the door to conversation, or merely swung it wide open to scrutiny? As people filtered past, discussing her work, Heather reflected on the dichotomy of being an artist and the perennial need for acceptance. She wasn't merely sharing her voice, she was bearing her soul for all to witness. Deciding it was now or never, Heather approached her father, who remained visibly shaken. "Dad, you're still here," she said, a glimmer of hope mingled with expectation. "Can we talk about what I just said? It felt like a breakthrough, at least to me." He glanced at her, the confusion dissipating slightly. "I think there's a lot to unpack. I don't want you to feel like you have to hide from us anymore, but some of what I saw tonight." He hesitated, searching for words. "It scares me. It feels so heavy." Shifting closer, she held his gaze, yearning to bridge the chasm that had long defined their relationship. "I understand. It's heavy because it's real, but isn't that the essence of life? To confront what's uncomfortable. I need you to see me, the real me." His sigh was heavy, a blend of resignation and consideration. "Maybe I'm just struggling to redefine what me means, too." In that moment of shared uncertainty, Heather found herself empowered. She had opened a dialogue where there once had been silence, providing them both a pulse of new possibilities. This was not merely an exchange about art, it was a candid exploration of expectations and fears, one that she was determined to navigate onward together with him. As they spoke, a young art enthusiast approached, her enthusiasm palpable. "Your piece on emotional exploration, the way you convey pain and growth, it really struck me," the girl said earnestly. Heather felt a rush of validation, her journey to authenticity was resonating with others. "I've faced similar struggles. Your art inspires me to confront my own." Heather's heart swelled, realizing she was actively creating connections beyond her family. Perhaps her art wasn't just about self-expression, it was a bridge for others to share their stories. This epiphany ignited a new vision within her, a project rooted in collective narrative threaded through personal experiences. "I'd love to share your story," Heather found herself blurt out. "Maybe we could collaborate." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? I'd love that. Your honesty is a beacon." The friendship began to bloom, and with that warmth, another seed of courage burgeoned within Heather. Her vision expanded beyond her family, it was a call to all those who felt unseen. As the conversations around her continued to surge, Heather glanced back at her father. His transitional expression, recognition and admiration reassured her. Suddenly, she understood that the vulnerability she had offered might just inspire not only the acceptance she craved from her family but also a newfound purpose. The evening drifted seamlessly into deeper discussions about art and emotion, sparking new ideas that flourished in the fertile soil of her heart. But as she moved through the gallery, the nagging thought of her father's unresolved concerns remained. Yes, she was establishing her own identity, but what of his expectations? The question loomed, hovering like a fragile thread waiting to be woven into the tapestry of their journey. Could she challenge the expectations without alienating those she loved? Would her quest for authenticity lead to healing or further division? As the night wore on, Heather sensed The gravity of the shifts happening around her. With the potential for collaboration opening doors, she was eager to delve deeper into the next challenge, her father's need for clarity as he began navigating the waters of acceptance. As the first light of dawn began to peek through the gallery windows, illuminating new horizons, Heather felt the thrill of the unknown. She stood at the precipice of not just her evolution but the formation of unwavering bonds rooted in honesty. And with a fierce resolve, she took a step forward. It was time to confront her father's fears directly. What would it take to dismantle those walls, and could she ensure that truth was the foundation of their future? That was the question resonating in her heart as she prepared for the next phase of her journey. The morning light flooded the gallery, casting long shadows that danced across the floor, as Heather gathered her thoughts. The conversations from last night echoed in her mind, each word imbued with significance. She felt buoyed by the possibility of connection, but the weight of her father's lingering doubts darkened her mood. The joyful energy that had accompanied her brave declaration was now interlaced with uncertainty and a hint of dread. She needed a plan. It wasn't enough to simply confront her father about his fears, she had to create a safe space for both of them, a way to encourage openness without allowing defensiveness to surface. In her heart, she recognized that navigating the web of expectations would require finesse. This realization fueled her determination to take meaningful action. As she wandered through the gallery, her gaze fell on her recent creations, each piece a manifestation of her journey, but also a map of the emotional landscape she wished to explore with her father. Perhaps the answer didn't lie in direct confrontation, perhaps it would be more fruitful to invite him into her world, to let him experience her narrative through the lens of her art. That afternoon, she set to work on a new piece, infusing every brushstroke with her hopes for reconciliation. Each color became a manifestation of her resolve, a celebration of vulnerability that contrasted sharply with the anxiety swirling inside her. This was no longer just about her or her past, it had evolved into a shared mission, one that could bridge the gap between them. As days crept forward, Heather devoted herself to this project, yearning to finish a piece she could share with her father, an invitation to step into her world rather than merely dismiss it. She envisioned him standing before her art, feeling the raw emotion encoded within, allowing it to guide him into understanding. One evening, after weeks of labor, Heather prepared for their discussion. She had finalized a piece that epitomized her journey toward authenticity, encapsulating her fears and triumphs in radiant hues and striking forms. Now she only had to bring him in. She called her father, nervously asking him to meet her at the gallery that weekend for a private viewing. His response was tentative, laced with curiosity, but Heather sensed his underlying fear. It was the same apprehension she had once harbored, the fear of confronting something that could change everything. As the day approached, she felt a burgeoning excitement alongside her anxiety. Could this be the moment when pretense dissolved, and heart-to-heart communication overtook lifetime silence? She rehearsed her words in her mind, determined to articulate her vision clearly without falling into the trap of expectation. When the day finally arrived, Heather felt numbness wash over her as she stood in the gallery. The space felt transformed, remnants of her former vulnerability now felt empowering. She knew this moment was pivotal, perhaps one of the most significant of her life. As her father stepped through the doorway, Heather observed the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. The formalities of initial greetings felt insubstantial. Instead, they drifted toward her latest piece, her heart pounding in anticipation, ready to unveil not just the art but the truth behind it. "Dad, this piece tells my story, the battles, the revelations, the pain and the growth." He stepped closer, studying the interplay of colors that reflected her emotions. "It's beautiful," he finally uttered, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. In that moment, Heather realized she was extending a lifeline, a bridge meant to connect their worlds rather than isolate them further. As they stood there, an unspoken tension charged the air, offering a rare opportunity for honest dialogue to emerge. Could this be the start of deeper understanding between them, or would fear take over once again? As Heather took a deep breath, she steeled herself for what was to come. Could the art she'd created weave together their fractured relationship, fostering a sense of acceptance that they both desperately needed? In preparing to share her truth, she resolved to confront the impending storm of emotions that could arise. The moment of truth lay before her, and as she stood poised in readiness, she could feel the air around them thick with possibility, a possibility that held the promise of transformation. What would her father's reaction reveal, and could this moment spiral into something greater than either of them anticipated? As the first streaks of dawn illuminated the gallery, Heather felt a tangible energy in the air, the culmination of countless hours spent pouring her heart into her art, alongside the daunting anticipation of sharing that journey with her father. As she watched him study the vibrant hues and bold strokes she had chosen to express her most vulnerable experiences, a profound silence enveloped them, thick with unspoken emotions. "Dad, this piece is titled Emergence," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with anxiety. "It represents my journey to find my voice, to reclaim my identity from the expectations that have overshadowed my life." The title itself felt like a declaration of independence, a statement that threaded through every layer of paint. Her father, still examining the piece, turned toward her, eyes widening with the dawning realization of what lay beneath the surface. "I see layers of pain, joy, discovery. It's intricate," he replied, a mixture of pride and confusion flickering across his features. "Is this what you felt all along? Why didn't you show me before?" Heather took a deep breath, the moment heavy with the weight of years lost in silence. "Because I thought you wouldn't understand. I feared your disappointment would drown out my desire to create." The honesty spilled forth, raw and unfiltered, creating a bridge between their worlds. His gaze softened, and he stepped even closer to her artwork. "I never wanted to dismiss your passions, Heather. I worried about what would happen if you took risks, if you chased what you loved instead of what was sensible." The knot in Heather's stomach began to unravel. "But Dad, what is it all worth if I'm not living authentically? It feels like I've been muffled for too long under the weight of all that sense and expectation." As she spoke, she realized she was no longer the hesitant daughter seeking approval, she was a woman boldly claiming her right to forge her path. "I see that now," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "But in doing what you want, I just want to ensure you're not setting yourself up for failure." Heather's heart swelled at his concern. This moment wasn't merely about her. It was a conversation about understanding mutual fears and aspirations. "Dad, I embrace failure now. It's part of growth, and what I'm creating is so much more than art, it's me. It reflects my journey and my growth." Now there was strength in her words, and she felt it resonate with both of them. The quiet reverberations of her statement hung in the air when her father finally closed the distance between them. "I'm proud of you for taking this leap, Heather. I don't want to hold you back anymore. I'm just afraid I want the best for you." A stream of warmth washed over her, this was the moment she had longed for, the acceptance she had craved. "The best for me is not the same as it once was. I'm defining best for myself. Adjustments will need to be made, and I still want your guidance, but I need your support too." This declaration felt liberating, like the final stroke on a canvas. The conversation shifted unexpectedly, transforming into a space of recognition. Her father, visibly humbled, nodded slowly. "Let us navigate this together, then. I may not always see your vision, but I want to understand it." Heather felt exhilaration surge within her. She was no longer confined by the specter of past expectations, she had carved out a new narrative, one where her aspirations and her most authentic self could coexist alongside her family's love and concerns. As they stood before emergence, with its swirling colors symbolizing emancipation, Heather understood they were both on a journey toward evolution, a father and daughter learning how to embrace hope together. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, filled with gratitude. "This moment means everything to me." "I should be thanking you," he responded, a smile breaking across his face. "For giving me the chance to see you as you truly are." She studied his expression, and it marked a definitive shift, a promise that their relationship would not dissolve under the surface of fear or misunderstanding but would grow, expand, and flourish in newfound ways. With a lightness in her heart, she envisioned collaborative projects that could blend their worlds, making room for both art and legacy. The gallery transformed into a new kind of sanctuary, not merely a collection of her works but a testament to the bridges built through vulnerability and love. Heather realized that she had conquered more than just her fears. She had paved the way for a lasting understanding that threaded through the fabric of her family. In that single moment, deep within her, she felt validation flood her being, a quiet triumph echoing through every fiber of her being. She had indeed emerged from the shadows, standing tall in her artistry, in her voice, and most importantly, in herself. The future no longer felt predestined, it shimmered with endless possibilities, and as she contemplated stepping into new territories, Heather knew this was only the beginning of her voyage. And in that nexus of hope and new beginnings, she promised herself to carry that light forward, to continue creating not just art, but a life intertwined with authenticity and courage. The gallery stood behind her, and as she turned toward the world beyond, a crucial thought lingered: she would ensure her story inspired others to confront the shackles of expectations and pursue their unique paths of freedom and fulfillment. Now, in a bold narrative of her own making, Heather stepped out, knowing she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Her canvas was merely a start. She would continue to paint her life with increased fervor, grounded in the profound understanding of who she was meant to be. As she walked away from the gallery that morning, Heather felt a sense of readiness, a promise to herself to keep creating, keep evolving. And now, a challenge beckoned: for all those witnessing her journey, do not wait any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Heather's transformation and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.